Hey guys, just a reminder before we start the videos to like and subscribe so we can keep providing these great videos for you.
So before we started, so sorry for almost kill you.
It's okay,
Yeah,
you know, and
God.
who knows if it was you or LA in
Well,
general.
probably me. It's just like I came out of that flight and I was feeling all right. I have this big plane to come and I come here like 9 a.m. I was just like, okay, I have a bunch to do. And then I started to feel like, and then I went to the front of the store one time and
Right.
the time that I met you. And then I came back. I didn't feel okay. I was dizzy. And then I went home. I stayed like 2 hours and a half only.
Yeah, I think
did this
a
whole
lot of
mess.
us were just letting our guard down. You know, we were thinking, I thought, I haven't had it yet. And I thought, no problem. So, you know, I just stopped wearing my mask off all the
Yeah.
time.
Well, no, I went to, last time I wore a mask was like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
I went to Europe. I went to Spain and England. Didn't see one single person with a mask.
Right.
And I was feeling confident.
But the
And
rate-
I'm pretty sure that I got it on my only day off in London while visiting the National Gallery. So it's a Rembrandt COVID.
Right.
So it's a fancy COVID.
Blame
It's not-
Rembrandt.
Blame Rembrandt. It's like alt portrait. Just watching that thing that I saw so many times, and I feel that was the day that I got it.
Yeah.
It was very packed. They have like this Christmas fair in front of the National Gallery. So it's like the only place that I went, like, plus the tube, like the tube over there is kind of packed too.
Right.
But again, nobody wearing masks.
Yeah.
I don't know why you apologize. Julie, I'm sorry, Julie. I know that you dodged it for 3 years. I know that you clean all your groceries. I know that you stay home for 2 years wearing masks inside. I'm so sorry. So sorry for that. Okay, now we can start.
Out of the way. Now we
Out
can
of-
start.
out of the
Do I
way.
need to look there or here?
Here, to me, why are you looking there? You can look there if you want to send like a straight message to someone. Like if you want to threat someone, you do it to the camera.
Okay.
No? You don't
Hello to all of my fans out there.
Eddie, so you put up. So first of all, let me explain why you're here. Like because you're a racer here and you're a close friend. So if I just invite you over, people are gonna get jealous. And I still have. I got a lot of messages. You should ask me to come because I have a lot of stories. Well, the thing is, I'm trying to cover everything I can. And the reason that we did this is just because we have so a lot of interesting visitors here, and some people come just one time. Like John Morton came in and just kind of invited him over, and then we have Clayton, Christian's father, who knew John Morton. Said, "Look, if you have the contact, just ask the guy to come." So it's just like I'm trying to explore the visitors that we have because we have a beautiful location. It's very well located too, so we have those people over. And the racers that I interview here is just like if you want to race or if you want a championship or if you're doing like I'm trying to do it this way so I can cover everybody in a fair way. But you're here because you wrote a book.
Well, it's the only reason I finished the
Only,
book is so that I could be on here.
Okay, so that's just in time. We're just recovering for COVID, so it's gonna today. Carlos hates that I put dates on it, but today's my very first day back to the store.
Welcome back.
And today's Wednesday, right? Yes. So on Friday, this episode's gonna go on, and then we can do some adverts for your book.
Here we go. Got to do promotion.
Promotion, yeah. So my first question is: this is a compilation, right, of
Yes.
presentations that you did for over 5-10 years almost.
Starting in 2008.
Okay, so 14 years from here.
You're right.
Can you explain me what are those? Because I kind of understand, but I never went deep to understand what are those. Where are you doing this?
Right.
I know that you have a master's degree in popular culture,
Right.
which I don't know the translation to Portuguese. But there is a there's a master's on that over there. No, right?
In Japanese, it's Taishu Bunka.
Well, that didn't happen at all. But explain to me why have you done that? I know that you love the hobby, and what was your goal doing that? I know that you went to Washington and you went to other states to do those presentations.
Yeah.
Can you try to at least to start introducing to me why you were doing this and what was the reason for that?
So I have this kind of unusual master's degree in popular culture studies. There's only one school in the U.S. that offers a master's degree level, and that's in Bowling Green, Ohio. And while I was a student in graduate studies in the late 80s, they have national conferences all over different cities, large cities in the US. And at that time, I did presentations on things I was interested in, like Japanese detective fiction, Japanese, coffee houses. I did one thing in Adrian Belew, who's a guitar player from King Crimson, so just personal interests. So then I let it rest. When I got back into slot car racing in 2005, 2006, I thought about, well, this would be a perfect subject to get back in touch with my popular culture roots and slot car racing. And I thought it would make a really good presentation. So I got in touch with them and found out that there was a panel called Vehicles Culture. And it just covered, if you were on that panel, it covered anything from, there was one presentation on women drivers in the 1930s of one-to-one vehicles. Another one was backward semi-truck races in the streets of Colombia. I mean, just really strange topics.
Right.
And I thought, okay, well, I'll propose something about slot car racing. And so what I thought at the time, since I'd just been back into it for about a year and a half, or close to 2 years, I noticed that there were a lot of the racers who I raced with in the 1960s, the late 1960s, who were back racing again. So people like John Sucres and Brian Warmack and Mike Stubbe, and all these guys were guys that I raced with back in the 60s. And they were back racing again under what we called D3 at the time. And I thought this would be pretty cool to do a little bit of a history, writing about how these guys were racing back in the 60s, were at the top of their game, and all of a sudden, 40 years later, they're back doing it again. And so I wrote up the paper, proposed it, and it was accepted. So I did that first paper. I think that was in San Francisco. And then a few years later, I just thought, okay, it'd be fun to do another one. So I did another one. The next one was, since I had gotten into club racing as opposed to commercial racing with the big tracks. So I did another paper comparing those two, and I did that presentation. And then I waited another year or two, and I thought it'd be fun to profile different collectors of slot cars. So I profiled, I think, 10 different collectors of huge collections of different kinds of slot cars. That was the third presentation. The fourth one was, I think, the next year. I thought to do builders, people that were building frames, chassis, painters. One slot car track builder that was Bob Scott, who built my track also. And I think you were profiling.
Yeah, there's a handsome guy there.
Yeah, some guy named Marco. Did something.
If you promote that, probably the sales will go up.
And then, let's see, I think then I took a break from it. And I think with COVID coming on, I just thought of something to do. I didn't have anything else to do. People were talking about how slot cars are dead, and I thought, it's pretty active in my life. And I thought about 1 month of slot car racing. I just decided to make a list of all the different activities that I do in 1 month. So I called it 50 Shades of Slot Car Racing, and it was for 1 month, January of 2020. And then I did one. The final one was about, I changed panels from vehicle cultures because a friend of mine started a new panel called Happiness, and it was covering all different aspects of happiness. So happiness in movies, happiness in music. And I proposed doing one about happiness and my hobby, slot car racing. And she said, sure, write it up, let's do it. So I want to explain that conference has over 2,000 presenters each year. So it's a very large conference. And so I did the last one on happiness and slot car racing. So I had all these 6 presentations, and rather than take the time to rewrite everything into one coherent book, because I'm essentially very lazy, okay, I figured the best thing to do is to take those chapters, what I call them chapters, put them together, write an introduction, conclusion, asked Howie to write a foreword to it, and was able to put it together as a book.
I have a bunch of questions about those presentations.
Sure.
You told me that you have like 2,000 guests.
Right.
And I remember you going to Washington to present one. Can you tell me more about this organization and how it did?
Yeah,
Because the time that you told me that, I'm going to Washington to talk about slot car racing, I said, okay,
Yeah.
the Obama family will be there. And Kissinger is going to be doing the introduction. So it was kind of, for me, it was kind of not a gray area, but it was kind of cloudy to understand what you were doing. And I want to understand who are those people who are kind of...
Well, if I should explain. There were 2,000 participants, but in no way don't think that there were 2,000 people in the audience.
Oh, okay.
No, what's going on is
Madison Square Garden.
30 rooms there are 30 rooms of presentations happening at the same time.
Well, but vary the location, right?
They pick a hotel.
Oh, okay.
So it's a big hotel, fancy place like the Sheraton.
Where was the first one?
The first one that I participated in was the one in San Francisco.
In San Francisco.
Yeah, I forget the order of where I went, but there was one in San Diego, Washington, Seattle. Okay, so those are the places that I did them. So there's 30 rooms of presentations going on.
Okay.
And each hour and a half, there's maybe 3 presentations. So you've got 3 times 30, all these presentations going on all at the same time for an hour and a half. So depending on if something seems interesting, you may end up with like 50 people standing in the room, or you may end up with 2 people in the room. So it would really depend. So I had varying amounts of people. Sometimes there were maybe 10 people in the room. Sometimes there were 20.
And that's organized by the guys from the University of Ohio.
It's Bowling Green State University in Bowling Green, Ohio. And this association, it's the Association of Popular Culture. Okay. They also have an Association of American Culture, which is a little bit different. And they have still a yearly conference. It's going to be in San Antonio in April, I believe.
Okay. Are you doing?
I'm not going this time.
Why not? April. There's still
time. Just to something like slot car racing and going to Italy coming up in May, it gets in the way. That's one reason. But it's just I don't know. I don't have a paper in my head to do right now, so I'll probably do another one in another year or 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go to these places, you present slot car racing to those people. I understand that you have a master's in popular culture, but there's more things moving you to do this. Are you planning to how can I say that? Is your ultimate goal try to bring more people to slot car racing, or just to create some sort of awareness?
I like talking about myself and what I'm into doing. So it's purely that reason. It's like whatever I'm into, I tend to share what I'm doing with people. And so this was just a way of, I like to do some creative things from time to time. So this was something that I like to write. So I decided to write it, and I thought, well, I don't want to just have it sitting in a file cabinet or on my computer. I want to be able to get it out and share it with people. So a few people that came to the presentation, a couple of people came up to me after, and they said, I used to race slot cars a long time ago. That particular conference is mostly academics. I'd say, maybe 2/3 of them are professors and 1/3 of them are graduate students.
Okay.
So it's an academic conference, but it's covering everything from Barbie dolls to shopping malls, fast food, fashion. It's just covers everything and anything related to popular culture.
Must be an interesting weekend to go to those
places. It's about 4 to 5 days worth of presentations, and it's literally from morning till evening. Every hour and a half, 30 rooms of presentations. It's for somebody that's into popular culture, it's like.
Do you have to buy a ticket or just?
Yeah, they charge. If you're presenting, you got to pay to present.
Do you remember the website?
If you search Popular Culture Association,
we can put a link. We can put a link below. Yeah. So the book has 146 pages.
155, I believe.
155. All right. And I remember that at the 71, you have the highlight of the book. Let me see.
The table of contents?
No, the page 71 where you say that I am 37 years old. So that's incredible. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, for you, about
that's
you.
That's the highlight of the book. 37-year-old. Great. It's going to be here forever.
That was 37. What, 15 years ago that I read that?
15 years ago. You just say it was just 5 years ago. So let's go one by one. What do we have in the first one? The first one is...
Ooh, you really want to do that?
Yeah.
Huh?
So you're calling chapters. I'm calling the presentation. So it's just 5 ones. So let's go to the first one. Slot car races still at it after 4 years.
Yeah. So I explained it a little bit already. So when I got back into slot car racing, which was about 2005.
Well, you gave me the fast route. Just go slowly. Let's go.
Oh.
Well, the first one is very short. Let's go for it.
Well.
Okay.
Again, I'm just going to give you the
Bullet
version
points.
that I want. Primarily, there were these people who were, you could call them pro slot car racers back in the 60s.
I'm going to show you how I'm going to illustrate that. I know that your name was in the original shit of the 1963 or 64 Southern California Racing Association.
Yes, the USRA. Right.
Yeah.
And I was 15 years old, 16 years old maybe, and I barely even remember it. I can remember being in a room with people, but I mean, it's a long time ago. I was probably 2 to 3 years younger than guys like John Sucres and Mike Stubbe, so I was more of a kid kind of tagging along because when you're a teenager, 3 years makes a huge difference. Yes. So I was kind of like tagging along, and in some ways they took pity on me. I was a kid that didn't have money, and they saw that I could drive pretty well back then. And so, they would give me old tires. John Sucres gave me a motor here and there.
Oh, nice.
So I mean, I was like, I became like a younger brother friend of some of them. Sweet. And, and it kept me close, to hanging out, continuing to do it. So what I did when I got back into racing, most of us couldn't even recognize each other because it had been 40 years. We reintroduce each other. Oh, Eddie, okay, I remember you.
I remember you.
That kind of thing. And the racing was just starting off, but it was, again, we were retired. We had the money to get back involved in the hobby.
Yeah.
And so
it was a little bit cheaper too, right?
For me, it was just simply affordable. I mean, the only way I could afford racing when I was a kid was by winning gift certificates. And those gift certificates, when I won races or podiumed, I could then buy parts that continued to allow me to race. So that was the only way that I was able to really stay involved in it. So I stayed.
It's fascinating to me how in the back they always have like money involved. They always been like money prize and gift certificates, and John Sucres wanting a Corvette and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, he didn't actually. His sponsor gave him a used Shelby Mustang. That was the real story for winning that huge race that was the Hemisphere in Texas.
Okay.
And it was kind of as a reward from Ron Mura. He gave him this.
Okay.
And I remember him driving it up to the raceways after that. It was like, geez, this guy wins a real Shelby Mustang. I'm going to stay a slot car racer for the rest of my life if that's what
we should do some research and find out where this car is,
because
nobody trashed a Shelby Mustang, so we might find out that car, do a piece.
It'd be a little tricky now. Some people, Pete Zimmerman's gone. He may have known Torrey Anderson, who was John Anderson, may know. Brian may know something.
What happened to Torrey Anderson who changed his name?
Well, Torrey was from Sweden originally.
Yeah.
I don't know at what point.
One point he decided, I'm going to be John.
Yeah, people go through change. I mean, I was known as Eddie growing up in my slot car world, and then when I got to be maybe right around 18, I started going by Ed. I thought I was now grown up, so I can go by Ed.
I still call you Eddie.
And still, yeah, you do. My slot car friends call me Eddie, but most of my non-slot car friends still know me as Ed. So it's like my slot car racing.
Slot car.
Yeah, Fast Eddie.
Fast Eddie. So but we can do that. We can find out where this car is. The Mustang. They didn't make many.
Yeah, I mean, remember it was a dark blue one.
Dark blue one.
It was a dark blue
with the stripes.
Yeah. From what I remember, it had the stripes. It was definitely a Shelby Mustang.
The Ron Mura the / John Sucres.
Right.
Mustang.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to
search it down.
See it.
Yeah. Put it in the front of the store. So anyway, back to the chapter. So what I really wanted to do with this was just show how these kids that were, at the top of their game back in the 60s, they took a 40-year break. Slot car gets reinvigorated, reinvented almost, because they call it retro because they tried to bring it back in the spirit of the 60s with scratch building. They actually went back to an era that was a little bit before I think they should have, because when I quit in about 1968, The angle winder had already come about. I love the angle winders, but Paul Sterrett was one of the people with Mike Stubbe that brought it back. And for whatever reason, I think maybe because it was easier to build scratch-built cars using an inline bracket, they decided to lock it, retro racing, into that. And so, that's what they brought it back as. And all of a sudden they were having, these races at Buena Park Raceway, weekly. I think they were weekly races. It may have been more, but the same guys were winning again. Stubbe was winning, Sucres was winning, Warmack was winning. And a couple of them actually traveled to Chicago for a big race. And there was one weekend where I think it was Torrey Anderson won in Chicago and Mike Stubbe won in L.A. It was like this thing where it was still going on in a very exciting way for people that were back into it again.
Yeah.
So that's what I tried to capture with that chapter.
I heard about this race in Chicago where the two associations kind of mixed and they tried to figure out what they're going to do, and they didn't get along. And that's why they separate.
That probably was way before, yeah.
Well, I heard about this big race in Chicago. Like, I think Brian came here and told that they were smoking outside of the raceway and trying to decide things, and have Stube over there and have.
Was that when they were bringing back the whole retro racing thing? Yeah. Probably Dennis knows more about that whole era.
Probably was Dennis who talked about it.
Yeah, I didn't. I was racing. I got back into it, pretty seriously, but. What happened for me next, which leads me to the second chapter, is Craig Williamson, who is a racer in the Far Out Slot Car Club. He was also racing retro cars at Buena Park Raceway. And he mentioned to me one day when we were standing at the track, "Hey, Eddie, have you ever done any 30-second scale racing? You might really like it. We have a club over in Burbank and Glendale, and we got a bunch of tracks, and you ought to come do it." So I said, "Well, let me know when you're doing it." So I showed up, and with my typical ego, I thought, "Oh man, I'm going to go and kick ass," And I showed up.
Do you have this ego?
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh,
yeah, really?
Yeah. So I went, quiet ego.
Okay.
So I went, and it was a race at Nigel's house in where does he live in? Is it Sherman Oaks? Yeah. A really nice track that fills his garage, and I was kind of shocked that I came in 12th. I thought,
okay, good for you. Reality check.
Yeah, it really put me in my place. But it did make me feel like, okay, this is kind of fun. I got to do better than 12th. So I decided to come to the next race, I remember in the beginning I bought one car. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to get one car. And the next thing I know, I thought, they've got 6 classes. Well, okay, I'm going to get 6 cars, and no more than 6. Next thing I know, I've got 70 cars. And as you know me, I've got half of them are in pieces.
Yes.
Because I'm taking the best motor.
No,
from
they all
this
look
one.
like new. The thing is, now 15 years later, you're still winning races with the cars that you set up 15 years ago.
It's kind of true.
Oh God! I looked at this thing like, how?
I am not a builder or tuner. I certainly
or a cleaner.
Or a cleaner.
Nothing of those things.
Isn't it amazing that the book looks pretty good?
Yeah,
from me.
Yeah, wasn't you who designed it or printed?
Absolutely. Can you imagine if I had designed it?
But it's looking good. It's looking very good, and it's very nice to have you sharing all this information. It says Eddie all around it. It's when you read it, and I did read it. I know that you don't believe me, but I did read it, and the thing is, it's you all the way. Like, I can hear your voice narrating this thing, and as much as it's a lot of personal information, it's just like sharing passion. And if people take this book and read it, it's an easy read. It's very nice to see how you see this thing around it, and if you gather like 1% of the information that is here and try to share with someone, the passion is out. The passion's there.
Well, I do want to say up front that the book it's not at all a history of slot car racing.
No,
it's more of a memoir.
Yeah.
Of my
kind
experience.
Of memoir, kind of a.
And I didn't know how to get around this, but I think if some people read the first 2 chapters, there's a bit of repetition in those first 2 chapters because they are separate presentations, and so I had to explain what is slot car racing at the beginning of each one of those chapters. So I was a little bit afraid that it's going to sound too repetitious, but I think toward the later chapters I really got into different topics with builders and collectors and the happiness part of it. So I think it ended up coming out pretty good. And it is definitely a different take on slot car racing because it's totally from a personal perspective. It's not at all like a history, even though it does cover some history.
67, page 67. That's the highlight of the book.
Is that the point?
Yeah.
I should have put that in
Marco
bold.
Carvalho is a 37-year-old Brazilian. That's
Rip out
great.
the rest of the pages.
Yeah,
Who
that's
needs
fine.
them?
I'm okay with that. I'm gonna die with 37 now. You know, I started my grandma when she had her birthdays, and I always, when I was a child, I always ask her, "How old are you?" And she said, 42. And she wasn't 42 for sure. But she always repeat that till like the last day of her life, 42. And I kept this in my mind. Like when people are, how old she died? I said, 42.
42?
Of course. And now I almost 42. It's like, oh my God, I'm a grandma. So that's the whole, my grandma kept in my head the 42-year-old thing. Eddie, so the book Slot Car Racing in Popular Culture, right here. It's on Amazon. We're going to put a link below the video so people can buy it.
Great.
The price is varying a lot. Like sometimes it's 22,
I think it's
28.
back to what it should be. It's listed as $29.95.
Right.
And Amazon, apparently what they do is they lower the price for the first week. It goes up and down to try to drum up some more attention or whatever, and then I think it goes back up. So I think it's going to stabilize it.
There's a lot of cool pictures over there, some pictures of Electric Dreams in the museum, a bunch of pictures of Far Out, some cars. Very nice. Your Saab.
Gotta have my Saab in there.
Your Saab is there. Only one, actually. Have two. Pretty cool stuff. Eddie, since you're here, talk to me about Japan.
Oh, what do you want to know about Japan?
How did you decide to go to live in Japan? Which year was that?
Well, I'll do it kind of quickly. That when I was a kid, we really never went anywhere at all. I was born and raised in L.A. and
like Boyle Heights.
Boyle Heights, yeah. And we ended up moving when I was 10 years old.
Boyle Heights was big in Japanese culture.
Well, it was the low-income immigrant community. So there were Japanese, Chinese, Mexican,
but
Italian,
that was before the
Russian.
Second War. Before the Second War.
Well, it was before and after that.
And
so
after?
I was born in 1951, and when I grew up until I was 10 years old, my best friends were, when I go to their house, that there would be, the parents were from Mexico or from Russia or from Japan so right across the street there was a Japanese family, and their grandmother was wearing a kimono and eating with chopsticks, and that was probably the first I had ever heard anything about Japan. But anyway, when I was right around 22, I decided to 22 years old.
Okay.
I decided to leave L.A. and move to Colorado, where a good friend of mine was living.
Okay.
I just wanted to experience a little more of the world, so I went to Colorado, and I just felt like this is just so interesting to live in a very different place. I thought I want to do more. I want to do more than this. I want to see more of the world. And so I was living in this little town in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and some guys had just returned from 6 years of traveling around the world, surfing with a surfboard, and they showed slides of the world. And I thought, again, I've got to do this. I've got to get out and see the world. But I was right in the middle of college then, and I thought, I was already like 5 years late, because I took 5 years off from high school before I went back to college.
So do that?
I was just doing a lot of things at that time, and
involving Woodstock.
No, yeah, a little bit of that. And so I decided I just promised myself I'm not going to leave the country until I finish college. And then the next semester I saw a poster that said, "You can go to Japan." And I thought, okay. And I went into the office to find out. And it was, if I was willing to teach English in Japan, they would give me a scholarship to be able to go to Japan. And it was supposed to be a 4-month program. And so I figured out how I could rewrite my English degree, and I rewrote it into what was called Japanese and English Intercultural Studies. And the whole purpose of that was so that I could go to Japan, finish my last semester. They sent me my degree, and I could stay in Japan, and then I could start doing my traveling around the world. So I went to Japan.
And how old were you?
I was 25.
25.
So I went there, finished the 4 months, and I just was so fascinated by Japan because it was just such a beautiful place, a safe place. It was just a great place for me at that time. The salaries were great for teaching English. So I just thought, I'm not ready to start leaving to travel and beyond Japan, so I decided to stay. They sent me my diploma, and I stayed, and I ended up staying there 6 years.
How did you do with the language?
Well, I studied before I went to Japan, and then
How long did you have here before?
I studied not enough. I can tell you this. I studied 3 months here in my college, and I can remember still we took China Airlines, our school program.
And you tried to speak
and
Japanese?
I could hear they were saying English, Chinese, and Japanese, and I thought, I think that's Japanese, but it might be Chinese. I couldn't tell the difference, and I was getting. I learned how to say, "Excuse me, can you tell me where the bathroom is?"
Okay.
But if they told me the answer, I wouldn't understand it. That's how bad my Japanese was at the time.
So I was in France, and I don't speak French. Like, I can understand a little bit because it's kind of similar to other languages that I speak, but I can't speak. So my thing is, every time that I need to ask where the restroom is, where the bathroom is, I Google, and I can hear the Google saying how you say that. So
Right.
I go to the person. As soon as the person points out, I say,
Right, exactly.
just run. Just run, and that's it. That direction. So that's all I need.
So the other way that I learned the language, though, is I was really interested in natural foods at the time, and so
God.
and this thing called the Book of Tofu had just come out a bit before, and I was interested in maybe opening a tofu shop in the U.S. So I decided to try to find an apprenticeship.
That's a bad business idea. It's really bad.
You know it. So I found a little shop in Kyoto, and I went up and I asked if I could apprentice. I would work for free. And so I did a year and a half as a tofu maker's apprentice. And that's really where I learned Japanese.
Oh, yeah.
Working every day, you know, and I had this this really weird vocabulary like of coagulant and pressure cooker, because there are things that you need to do the
Specific
job.
stuff.
Yeah. And so that really did it.
You know that you always told me that you speak Japanese, and I never kind of believe it. And then that day we went to the oldest Japanese restaurant in LA in Boyle Heights, and then you start to speak Japanese with a woman right away, with Lala, which is the owner. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, oh fuck, he really speaks
Well,
Japanese.
that's how I feel when I hear you speak Portuguese. So
Okay.
there
Yeah,
you go.
no, but Japanese is much more complicated than Portuguese.
Well, I don't speak that well, but I speak enough to get by, certainly. And remember, it's been
Like my English.
35 years since I lived in Japan. So I've really lost a lot of it. But I mean, when I get back speaking again, it comes back pretty quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like me in Spanish.
Like the racing, back to racing. That's the thing that I noticed when I got back into slot car racing after so many years. You know, the two things. I walked into Buena Park Raceway, and I swear the smells of the oil and the wintergreen, it took me right back to the days when I was a teenager. And I swear it was like a feeling of happiness that went over me. And when I got a controller in my hand, it was just like putting on a really comfortable pair of shoes and going for a walk. I just felt like I could just drive right away.
I had a similar feeling, like I was living here for my second time, and I was looking for some activity just to practice my English. And then I heard that Big Lou's was open like literally a few blocks away from where I was living. Mm-hmm. Then I went there one day and I saw the 132nd scale cars. And it's like, 132nd plastic cars. They don't look like all right. The plastic track, I don't like it. Mm-hmm. Because I was used it to build chassis and do 124th scale Blue King stuff. And then one day I said, okay, I'm going to get one car and let's race one time. And then I remember that the first time that I was really racing and I have to be concentrated for 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. I kind of clear my head for everything and just focus on one thing. Was kind of same feeling. I start to remember everything.
Yep.
And after that, when you see I was buying one of each, I was involved in more races. I met you. I got far out. And then after one, it took me to Buena Park. And we're here talking about slot cars now.
Yeah.
Like
It's very intuitive.
5 years later only.
When you did as much as you did as a kid, as much as I did as a kid, you get back into it. And yeah, it's pretty intuitive.
So it's a 26-year-old Eddie living in Kyoto.
Yeah.
Learning Japanese.
Yeah.
When did you decide to come back?
Well, at that time, I was married in Japan, and I was teaching at a university, and I wanted to get a permanent job at that university to get tenure. And the only way to get tenure was I had to have a master's degree, and I only had a BA degree at the time. So I decided to come back to the U.S. to get a master's degree. They didn't care at that university whether it was in mathematics or English, ESL, or anything.
Just
so I found this program in popular culture studies, which I thought this will be fun and, somewhat academic and fun. And then when I'm done, I'll come back. But we got to the U.S. and literally within a month, it felt almost kind of like escaping.
Oh, she came with you?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And
kind of escape. And she was from Kyoto as well.
Well, yes, that because she's Korean born in Japan. She was not a citizen of Japan, even though she was born. Mm-hmm. You'd have to read up the history to see that. So she was kind of happy to get out of Japan. And
via China Airlines.
No, that time probably Korean Airlines actually.
Well, Korean Airlines is pretty good.
Yeah,
it's one of the best 5 airlines out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was after 5 years living in Japan.
6
years. So 32-year-old Eddie comes back to LA and say, okay, I'm moving to Ohio now.
I went directly to the university in Bowling Green State in Bowling Green, Ohio, which is just south of Toledo. Yeah, and I knew I was only going to do a 1.5-year program there, but I didn't really know what I was going to do after. I thought I would maybe try to get into TV and film writing, and when I graduated, part of the program was to do an apprenticeship at the Emmy Awards. So I worked at the Emmy Awards for about 6 months, I think, and then I became an assistant director for a Japanese quiz show that was based in Westwood in L.A.
Okay.
We did some pretty crazy things with that. And I just got tired of not being able to get a real full-time job. I was already in my late 30s by then. And at that point, I got back into, my sister-in-law told me that LA Unified had a huge strike. They lost a lot of teachers. They said if you can breathe, they'll hire you. I thought, that's for me.
Ready, come on.
And,
you can breathe.
And
make it tofu.
I went, applied for the job. I got hired. That was in 1989, and I started teaching middle school because they basically said I really didn't want to teach junior high school, but I wanted to teach high school if anything. And they said, if you want a job, you'll teach junior high. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And I ended up being at the same school for 25 years, which is 2 miles from my house. So it turned out to be a really good career for me, a good fit.
But there's a leap in your story. So you finished Ohio State, the master's degree over there, and then you came back straight to LA?
Yep.
How long did you stay in Ohio?
1.5 years.
1.5 years. Okay, not long.
Yeah.
And then you came here,
looking
for houses and.
Well, I did the apprenticeship in the Emmy Awards, and then I did about 1.5 years of being a story analyst, or what they call a reader. Mm-hmm. A couple of years where I would, I'd pick up scripts, I would read them, I'd do a short book report, turn it in.
Did that.
My claim to fame is I turned down Dances with Wolves, and I turned down Goodfellas.
No, come on, really.
It's true.
Come on, Goodfellas. Nah. Dance with Wolves.
I showed them.
I showed them.
So maybe it was a good thing I got into teaching in junior high. And
for the popular culture. It was a good thing for the popular culture. Oh, God. Oh, no. Oh, God. The Godfather? What the hell is that?
No. Good fellas.
No, I know. I just put it more on your list. Goodfellas. Godfather, no. I don't like
I also turned down Scenes in a Mall. It was a Woody Allen movie that he was in. I think that was a horrible movie. So I am proud that I turned that one down.
You see, I told those guys.
I turned that one. I told them it was no good, and they still made it.
Too much. Oh, God. And then you start to teach and then stay there for 25 years.
Yeah.
all your patience that you have, did you create it during those 25 years, or you always like patient like that?
I don't know. I think I've always been fairly patient. You know, I was goofy enough, you know, as a kid to where I could kind of fit in, recognize. And, you know, there's probably something in me that recognizes I was a really horrible student. I was that kid in the back of the class that made fun of the teachers, you know, and always was doing pranks on teachers and this and that. So, you know, I put all of my energy into goofing around. And so in a way, my teaching middle school or junior high in LA was kind of like in this life karma for me. You know, it's like, this is what you get for fooling around. You're going to be a teacher and put up with all those little shits, you know. And so I don't know, there was something about me recognizing that, you know, it's not easy to grow up to be a kid going through stuff. And so I think I had some empathy for a lot of the kids that were going through what they went through.
Yeah.
And
especially it's not like a premium area. It's just like an area.
yeah, I was in East LA, which if anybody knows, it's a real low income area. And, you know, a lot of the kids are, you know, their parents are just really busy working and just don't have a lot of time to spend with them. A lot of them are immigrant parents who, you know, the kids end up being the interpreters for the kids and get away with a lot of stuff because the parents don't know what the kids are really up to.
Yeah, but
that's you know, it just was a good fit for me. I felt like I love the schedule. I love being done at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
I love having the summer vacations to go travel, and which I did still quite a bit.
Yep.
It just, you know, it just worked out.
Did you ever convince Julie to go to India with you?
To go to India?
Yeah.
No, she has no interest.
But she did some travel with you.
Yeah. We've done quite a bit of travel.
Okay,
Yeah.
but not India.
No, I went to India on my own. I've done the quote unquote hard places on my own. Yeah. I'm trying to get her to go to Italy with me this coming trip for May, but we'll see.
We need to talk about that. Like we're trying to raise the WRE.
Yes.
24 hours at NSR.
Yeah, so I found a good partner.
Yeah, we have, well, Rick Jokan is on.
Yeah, Rick is great. Rick is just a superb tuner, and I don't know a better driver. So, you know, I mean, it's I'm really happy to team up with him. We still don't know if you're going to do it or not.
Well, I'm going to bring the team down for sure.
We've got to have a team. We still need some people to do it. But that's going to be in May. So, you know, actually, I talked to Rick the other day, and we're
May is a very busy month.
What's that?
It's a very busy month.
Yeah.
Especially for me, we have the 12 hours at Scale Auto. And
the week before, right?
The first weekend is the Scale Auto 12 hours in Igualada, Spain. And then the next weekend we have the 24 hours in Italy.
Right.
And then the next weekend we have the UK Slot Car Festival.
Is it that next weekend?
Yes.
I thought there were 2 weeks between that.
And on the next one we have Le Mans in Monaco. No, I mean Indianapolis and Monaco. That I'm probably going to be covering one of the two.
Yeah.
As a photographer, so.
Yeah, it's a busy time.
It's a busy time. Like I cannot stay like a whole month in Europe.
Well, you can.
Oh no, I can't.
I spent 6 years in Japan.
Yeah, well,
you can spend 2 months in Europe. You know.
Yeah, this is like can I go walk into Sherman Oaks? Yes, you can. Yeah, it's a long time. We need to figure out because I don't know. Probably I'm not gonna do Spain, and I can do the Italian race and then the UK race and come back here and do Indianapolis the next weekend, or I don't know.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah, I gotta figure it out. But I just came back.
Just make sure you put the Italian race as your
priority.
Put
a mask and the Italian race.
And put a mask.
And
your priority, yeah.
Yeah, I raced Nico track in Spain.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nightmare.
Well,
Nico is out of business. We can talk shit about it. The track is.
Is it the grip or is it just the distance?
Bumpy.
What?
Bumpy.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, the distance, and it's too bumpy. Like, you see your car on the straight line just going, and you don't know if you're going to stay on the slot.
Do you think that the NSR situation will be a little bit better track? I mean,
I believe so.
Maybe they'll mount it to the tables
yeah,
better.
no, I believe there's going to be a better situation. Maybe the track is going to be a little cleaner. Mm-hmm. That's another thing. The race I raced was 6 lanes, 8 minutes per race. You cannot touch your tires.
Yeah.
So after 5 laps, your grip is gone.
Yeah.
And that's what I have to deal with to the end of the race.
Well, one thing I do like about the NSR race is I like the fact that it's a handout motor and it's handout tires You're not allowed to glue them or true them.
Yeah.
So I think that helps to level the playing field. I mean, I don't have any illusions that we're going to go and do really well there.
Of course not.
But I think, we're good drivers. I've driven a big track like Big Lou's. It's a big plastic track, even though I know it's a very different thing. But I feel like, Rick and I are experienced enough that at least we I don't think we'll be too big of an embarrassment. Let me put it that way.
No, yeah, I think if I go and we find 2 more good drivers, we can level like midfield.
Well, we'll see.
After that's very, very hard.
Yeah.
Don't forget that the crowd is much younger than us.
Yep.
We're going to be racing against like 20-year-olds. And they're used to that. They race in Lincoln tracks. And that's their big event. So
well, I was going to point out that the one thing I noticed, and I'm not sure the reason why, but here in the West, when we have the SCRA retro races, the guys that show up for that are still 50s, 60s, and 70s years old, and still the ones that win it. Chance Overholt in his 30s. Garrett Sisk was in his 20s. Who was the third guy that came? Duran is, around in his 40s now, maybe 40. So, you still have guys that are...
I get my...
And Marco Carvalho, when he was 21.
21, no. It's 2019 when I won that.
My point is, so even with, this older crowd, the younger guys do better here. And in the East, at Retro East, you see all the guys that are at the podium are generally they're 50s and younger, usually 40s, the guys that are at the top. There's a few guys that are old racers from the 60s that are doing well, but the guys that are winning tend to be the guys in their 40s,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I recognize that. I feel fortunate that I do as well as I do at my age. I really do.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you lose any reflex or anything. You just like... Maybe the ego is a little bit lower because you say something to me today that I was very impressed because you say like when I came in with my ego like I'm gonna win everything. I didn't know that you have this side. You're hiding very well. I think
maybe ego's the wrong word. I think maybe confidence.
Confidence, yeah.
That's maybe what I'm talking about more because I know that because I've won a lot of races. I think that's kind of given me this feeling of confidence when I go to a race. So when I went to Nigel's, that's what I'm saying, when I first started with 30-second scale race, I went there with this confidence like, oh, I'm going to be able to do this,
I think every winner has to have that level of confidence. I walk to the track the same way.
Yeah.
Like I know that I can do better than everybody else. There was when I was doing my driving test. I was 18 years old in Brazil. My father didn't help me at all. I couldn't drive his car. I couldn't practice. I have like some classes, and the guy who's giving the instructor was just giving me a lot of shit. Like, if I was your father, you're never gonna lend you. You're never gonna use my car. Blah, blah, bunch of shit. So I went to the driving test and was just like scared as hell. And then there was a line to go to the driving test. It was like an official government test. And in front of me was this lady who's probably almost 80. Like she was like, I don't know why she's taking a driving test right now. But she went there and she passed. And she came like kind of celebrating out of the car and saying, oh, come on, I need to do it. And then that point in my life, I said like, come on, I need to do it. Not comparing to other people, but it's like, look, I need to do better.
Right.
And I think that the confidence when you go to the race to a racetrack, it's built. Like I think I can walk here in any race if I get a good car and I can win the race.
Yeah.
Bring a brick joke and bring you on your best day, because I have this. I might not do it. I might end fifth.
But you have the feeling.
I have the feeling that I can do it. So that's from the start of the race, and that's something very cool about slot cars because it's if you race weekly or if you race monthly, it's like a monthly dose of this confidence.
Yeah.
And even if you don't finish well, it's more work to do and more work that you have to do on that part of your life.
Yeah.
So that's a very good thing about slot cars. And I have been racing slot cars since I was 11, 12. And I was building this confidence. And I think this helped me a lot in all the fields of my life, like professionally or walking to a club and talk to a girl and this kind of stuff. And this is a big thing about slot cars that I don't think people appreciate it.
Well, interesting you mentioned that because I talk about that same thing in terms of my profession. I really have that feeling like I survived 25 years of teaching junior high school in East LA. I really feel like if I could do that, 40 kids in a classroom, 5 to 6 hours a day for 25 years,
Yeah.
I can do anything.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave me confidence just in general in my personality, I think. The racing thing, for a second, to go back to that, is we touched on it some. I'm not a car builder. I can prepare a car. I know enough to be able to look at a car, and if my eyes are working well, to be able to
On that day.
on that day to set up sort of. But I always I'm grateful to Rick Jocham and Walt to go over my cars, even though they're my competition in the races here.
Yeah.
They go over my cars for me. And Rick said to me, he said, I'd rather have somebody that I can competitively race against than beat you because you have a crappy car.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm really happy about that. But I feel like, if I've got a well-prepared car, then I'm going to be at the top.
Yeah, but that's the we talk about Rick and Walter. That's the good thing about slot car racing. Like the good ones they share. Like there's a lot of people very secretively about measurements and stuff like that. Like if I go right now on Messenger and ask Duran about all the measurements about his car, he's gonna give it to me.
Yeah.
Like he did when I raced the Checkpoint Cup that I won.
Mm-hmm.
Like was all based on sharing information that Sam, that Rick Ling, that Duran could give me, and then I could build my car because I had no experience in building those things.
Well, I wonder if it's the people that share are the ones that have the real confidence in themselves as drivers, and because they feel like even if you have an equal car, I'm still going to beat you.
Yeah. So the ones that don't share, they're just
they're the ones that are like, hey, I got to keep this little secret to myself because if I don't, I may lose. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Same thing with people who just try to find gray areas all the time.
Yeah.
And don't put it out. Like they do little things, nobody's saying about it. I'm gonna keep this way.
Yeah.
Even if it's kind of on a
that's part of the nature of racing. I mean, if it's a gray area, it's not illegal until somebody points out that it's not legal.
Yes, but
people are always pushing.
If you come to the track with time and you do something that is not supposed to be legal, but you just found a loophole, you should share before you go to the race. And then, and when they're in the race with something they're not supposed to be there.
But that's just what you think. That not everybody agrees with that because it's not illegal. Another example.
But now we're talking about confidence again.
Yeah, I can remember racing with somebody who no names mentioned, but in the Far Out Club, and I remember we were going around a turn, and he wouldn't let me by, and I finally just passed him by, and I took him out. I nerfed him on the way out, and he got so angry at me, and he just said, "That is not very gentlemanly of you." And I said, well,
stiffen's the worst.
It's not. I said it's not illegal to do what I did, and you wouldn't let me pass by. It was the only way I could get by you. So. Anyway, there's you're always going to find even gray areas of agreement as to what's legal, what's not, what's proper, what's not proper.
But the program here, I was thinking about this because, as you know, we're writing the new set of rules for next year. And people come with innovation, and I love innovation. Like my favorite class is the hard body class at Buena Park, that you can really build the whole chassis the way you want it and make it work. And I've been very successful doing that. And because I've been creating new stuff, like the ways that the sides are holding there, the way that the weight can distribute the weight, even a ball bearing on the guide tongue, like you can do whatever you want. That's crazy. That's amazing. But it's not very popular because if a Marco comes up with a ball bearing on the guide, and the next guy who barely put his car together comes like 50 laps behind me, it's going to be hard for that guy.
Well, I still feel like the rules, one way to get around a lot of that is just saying, like, these are the rules, and keep them not super detailed. And you just say, if it's not mentioned here, then it's not legal. And if you question it, ask me.
Well, it's a big book now. We've been building one by one. And I'm telling you that because here, we're trying to build a popular program. It's not supposed to be a club for only 12 guys who really know to build the cars. So with that said, also we're racing ready to go, almost out of the box ready slot cars. So I need to make a little bit smaller what you can do, and that's the spirit of the Far Out Club. It's almost out of the box with some change of tires and whatever it is, but very, very, very small. And here for the next year, it's going to be like this way. I like to have people experimenting other stuff, but if it's too much, if it's in a level that the guy who came in 15th cannot do it, or he's not going to have the time to do it, I'm going to try to shorten this.
Well, here's another example. At a different raceway, we do hard body racing, right? And some people were taking the hard bodies and using special Dremel bits, grinding out the bodies to make them so light. And not everybody can do that. So I remember I brought it up to somebody, and I said, shouldn't you just make like lightening the bodies an illegal thing? And they said, no, that's something anybody can do. They can learn to do it. And I said, but it's not everybody really has that skill set. And then he said to me, well, not everybody can drive like you, so maybe you should be illegal as a driver.
Illegal as a driver. Have like a ribbon. Illegal. Illegal. 5 laps behind. You start the race across the street, and then you can run here, and then you start the race.
I'd go for that one. I still run okay.
Yeah, so next year, that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to reduce the changes that you can do at the car. I saw people doing a bunch of stuff at the Christmas Enduro, or for you, the Holiday Enduro. The Holiday Enduro. And those things like not supposed to be illegal, and I appreciate the change, and I appreciate people trying to make things faster and putting time on the cars.
Yeah, I saw things on the cars that you almost could consider what at least one thing did was similar to what the balsa wood thing, which was considered ballast, even though balsa wood doesn't weigh anything, because it helps stiffen it. There were certain things with spacers that also you could say that stiffened the chassis. So you could say, well, that was ballast by putting a long spacer.
It's going to be a long challenge for me, and we're going to have those meetings with the top drivers here. So I'm going to let them know that the first thing about this group is it's a commercial raceway. Oh, one thing that I was trying to run by you. In Formula One, when the teams became too much reach, they could do all the testings that they wanted, and they stay a lot of time on the track and wasting tires, wasting fuel. And then Formula One decided to limit testing. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but I'm going to limit testing here. Instead of having someone the whole week preparing cars, they're gonna, on the week of the race or the 2 weeks before the race, they're going to have only one session of training.
One session to test their stuff. Huh. But don't you think anybody can get around that by testing on their home tracks and stuff?
Yeah, well, but not on that track.
But in some ways, it gives even more of an advantage to people that have their own tracks compared to people that have a public venue to come to.
You can compare a wooden track like that for a plastic track. At some point, if somebody starts...
I'm not sure if that will make so much of a difference anyway.
I have a lot of complaints about people, I couldn't be there. I know those guys are there for the whole week. And I cannot just show up for the race.
It wouldn't make any difference anyway.
Yes. But at least it's going to be fair for everyone.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems a little odd to try to limit it that way, because I don't think it'll have any desired effect. I don't think it'll have a positive effect. All it'll do is maybe piss off the people that want to spend more time on the track tuning and testing. I mean, that's part of the joy of the hobby for some guys like Walt and Rick, is they like the process of coming and testing. It's not necessarily for the goal of having the fastest car.
No, not worried about them, because they ended up helping almost everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And then
I'm worried about those guys who are not coming because they don't have time to come.
Those guys won't come anyway. They'll make an excuse for any reason. I really believe different people. I mean, I as you know, I talk to a lot of different people. People don't come for a variety of reasons, and it's not the one that you're talking about.
All right. So, slot car racing in popular culture.
Yes.
Click on the link, below. You can get your on Amazon. There's a very nice picture on page 67 of a very young Marco, a 37-year-old Marco.
It's a great picture at the end about this author.
Yes.
So let's not forget that one.
Let me
Do you see the T-shirt I got on that one? That Julie got me?
Warning. May randomly
talk about
slot car racing. Here we go. Let me see. Let me put this one. Turn this. 1 sec. Here. There we go, Mr. Shore. Thank you very much. Hope you recover full like me.
That was it?
That was it. Like 1 hour and 8.
Oh, good.
Plus 45.
Not bad. 45 plus the restroom.
Plus the rest.
Right. Okay.
Can you sign for me mine?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Is this on camera?
Yes. Eddie, thank you very much. All right.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. If you want the book, link is below.
And thanks for not asking me anything about MISAC.
Oh yeah. Well, that's gonna be another show. Eddie, thank you.